Okay, so I'm a member of this slam poetry scene. Basically, it's an excuse to get people to listen to performance poetry by adding a competitive element to things. After running through the small scene in my city and wanting to branch out and push my career further, I started visiting places within driving distance that I could go to. This eventually led me to Charlotte, North Carolina. I started at their local team venue where you would compete to be part of a squad that goes on a national competition every year. I was doing really well and was accepted into the local crew pretty quickly. This led to longer stays and features at some of the other venues in the city. I started going to one that was particularly popular and really good for selling CDs. And that, where I met him, he slowly started flirting with me more and more. Although in my loose days searching for acceptance and love everywhere, something always kept me leery. I would gladly accept the drinks he sent over, smoke his weed with the group in the stockroom between sets, and hang out at parties and events. I always had the tickle in my gut, warning me not to get close. But over a year or two, we continued to become friends. After a while, he started calling and texting me more often, poking me on Facebook daily, sending messages about wanting to be more than friends and that he wanted to find a cold snow bunny. Yes, I'm white and he's black, settled down. Again, I never entertained the idea. There was always something gnawing at me. The crazy in his eyes was too hard to miss. I eventually moved to Denver to take a position teaching poetry and to work at a friend's law firm. The second Christmas I was there, I got the call. A friend from Charlotte, North Carolina relayed the following. He had found his white girl and got him married. They seemed happy at first, but slowly began fighting more and more. It spilled over into the venue, and often they had to be separated by friends from physically attacking one another in public. One friend later, thinking back, remembers the last time he saw them together. Him pushing his wife, followed by her throwing a drink in his face and scratching his neck deep enough to draw blood. My friend told me that after the couple had been dragged away from each other, she sat with him and smoked a cigarette. She said she laughed and jokingly said that you guys are going to kill each other someday. Around Christmas last year, his friend just stopped coming to the bi-weekly events that they both attended regularly. He explained it casually that they were just on a break. Time goes by. No one really questions why they haven't seen or heard from her in a while, thinking maybe she was breaking from the whole scene in order to put distance between herself and her husband. Her parents, however, hadn't heard from their daughter since Thanksgiving dinner. They would call him and he would say everything was fine and just blow them off. This continues until a week after Christmas, knowing their daughter would never miss a holiday without at least one call. So they called the police and sent them to the couple's home for a well body check. The cops arrived, knock on the door, and they are let in. They ask him where she is, and he replies that she's in the bedroom. He shows them to the room, and there she lay, dead for weeks, rotting in their bed. Oh, and he killed their little dog too. During this time, he had been attending events, hosting hip-hop nights, even publishing a blog on, making a marriage work on one of the local organization's websites, never once letting on that every night he was going home and sleeping with his murdered wife. The sickest part of all, he has a child from another relationship, a daughter who he gets to celebrate every year holiday with. That Christmas, they opened gifts, had dinner, cuddled up on a couch, and watched movies less than 100 feet from her decaying stepmother. I don't know what would have happened if I had ever taken him up on his offer to date, but I do know that it means my God are going to stay on speaking terms, and I will always, always listen. 10 years ago, our family friend was walking home from a party in a more rural part of the hometown. She got a little bit lost and her phone had died. This guy pulled over and offered to let her use his phone, but only if she got in the car so she wouldn't steal it. She really needed to call her parents since she was late for curfew, and the excuse seemed reasonable. So she got in the car, immediately locked the door and drove away. Somehow, she ended up being able to escape the vehicle and ran inside a nearby house. But no one believed her story until a young woman went missing from her job at a gas station a few years later. Our friend identified the van caught on camera in the parking lot as the same one she got into that night, years ago. 40 years ago, I had plans to go out to a club with my friend, but I canceled because a snowstorm was coming. My friend said she was going anyway because she was meeting one of her guy friends, and he was bringing his friend who she had a big crush on. The next morning, I woke to a frantic call from friends to see if I was okay. My friend had been killed. On the way to her club, her friend's car skidded off the snow-covered road at a high speed and crashed into a tree. My friend was in the front passenger seat and was killed. I know if I had gone out with Jenny that night, I wouldn't have let her leave with two guys alone, and I would have been in the front seat. A few summers ago, just before the start of my junior year in college, I decided to take a trip to San Francisco. Since I attended my home state's flagship university, I really needed a brief change of scenery. I've always wanted to be in California, which was convenient, as one of my friends was interning in San Francisco and offered to let me stay. All the details were eventually worked out, and I was so excited to go. My friend was still interning while I visited, so she wasn't able to show me around too much, but I had a blast exploring on my own. I spent the majority of my time reading at different parks and taking pictures. She got off work at around 5, so I would head back around then to hang out with her. I always knew I was close to her, as when I saw the construction, it was a huge project that required pedestrians to navigate through tunnels. I had been through them many times before, but on that particular day, someone ran up next to me right as we entered the dimly lit passage. He was a larger guy wearing a white wife beater and blue jeans. I'm usually pretty friendly, but something fell off about him. We awkwardly exchanged haze before I quickened to my pace, expecting him to just drift away, but he changed his pace to match mine and kept lingering. "So, what's your name?" he asked. "None of your business," I responded without looking at him, hoping he would get the hint. But he didn't. "Hey, you're really pretty, and do you want to go to a party?" But before even giving me time to respond, he grabbed my arm, and he was pulling me towards the end of the tunnel. I had no idea what awaited me there. His grip was incredibly tight, and he was so much bigger than me. There was no way I could escape but strength alone. Despite being a very tiny person, I didn't have any pepper spray or any self-defense skills. I had never felt so vulnerable in my entire life. My mind was trying to find a way to survive, but then I felt someone else pull my other arm from behind. I thought it was all over, but I looked back and saw that it was a woman around my mom's age dressed in business attire. Needless to say, I was very confused. "Hey, it's really you. I haven't seen you in so long," she said as she started sprinting towards the way she came from and pulled me with her. I let out a sigh of relief as I felt his grip loosened. I was static to exit the tunnel, and when I looked back, he was gone. She told me that she saw the guy go after me and knew that something was wrong. She walked the remaining block with me to my friend's place. I thanked her for everything, and we hugged before I hurried to tell my friend what had just happened. We never even got to exchange names, but I don't know what I would have done without her. It warms my heart to know that there are people out there who have the courage to help others. I actually recently moved to San Francisco, and the construction at the site of the incident has been completed. Even so, I think of her every time as I pass by.